In the last several years, 2026 is shaping up to be one of the best years to buy a cash flowing rental property here in Utah. Now, I know that's hard to believe because interest rates are still super high and the numbers are hard to make sense. But this is causing a lot of people to stay on the sidelines. Well, the smart investors, they are taking this opportunity to create deals because there's motivation in the market. That's exactly what I've done. I have scooped up many rental properties here in Utah and I've helped clients do it even more. In this video, I'm going to break it down exactly how to do it step by step. We're going to cover how to actually analyze these deals to see if they make sense. And then finally, how to pull the trigger. Get your notebook. By the end of this, you're going to know exactly how to find and close on a cash flowing rental property here in Utah by 2026. So let's start with the first step. Are you liquid enough? Do you have enough money to buy a rental property? This is something that I am constantly talking about with my clients. And listen, guys, in today's video, I want this to feel like I am literally coaching my younger brother to buy his first rental property. I want it to be intentional in that manner. So hopefully the detail is nitty gritty on what you can do and the action steps that you can take. Step one, do you have enough money, right? In this equation, we call this liquidity. How much money do you have that you're confident putting into real estate? Now, that means the confidence, you should have enough capital or a runway for your personal expenses, your life. And this is another reason why I will harp on why you need to have low expenses in your personal life, because it's really hard to invest if your runway is long. So let's dive into it. The liquidity. The liquidity obviously is important, right? With liquidity, that's how you're gonna buy a property. I harp on this more than anything when I'm talking to people that are wanting to get into investing. I want you to treat your personal life like a business, which means keep your expenses low and your active income, your revenue, you want to grow that as much as possible, right? So it's hard to buy rental properties if your liquidity is an issue all the time. So when I'm talking about liquidity, we need to have a runway for your personal expenses. Let's call it a bare minimum 4 months. If you're living bougie and you're buying Louis Vuitton, you live in a massive house with a huge mortgage payment, it's going to need a lot more of your capital to hold a 4-month runway, right? Whereas if you're house hacking, if you're renting by room, if your expenses are low, it's going to be a lot easier to check off your personal expenses. I'll call that PE, your personal expenses. Now, after your personal expenses and that runway is covered, now let's talk about the next part. And that's what we're going to invest into a deal. For a real estate transaction, for a cash flowing rental property in Utah, the bare minimum I would say is 50 grand. That can get you into condos and get you into some single families. But if you want to have a broad spectrum of deals that you're picking from, I would genuinely recommend 70K plus. So I'm going to write down 70K, even though you could get it done for 50K. So that's step one. Do you have enough money to buy a rental property? And if you don't, this is something that I also harp on. Let's say your first 20, 30 grand that you saved and it took you a year to save that 20 or 30 grand. I personally would invest that in growing your own skills to grow that active income so that your liquidity isn't always an issue. So let's say now you cross off that first step. You have enough money to buy your first rental property. That's great. So now the next step is defining your buy box. What type of properties are we going to buy? I cannot tell you how many times this part has made me not want to work with someone. And it's nothing personal about them. If you don't know what you want to buy, it's really hard for me to help you as a deal finder. And let me explain that further. So let's call it buy box. Buying cash flowing real estate is a super broad term. We can go storage units, we could go multifamily, we can go condos, we can go traditional where you're going with a bank. If you want to find a cash flowing rental property in Utah, I'm going to cut to the chase. It's going to be creative financing. That's what I have found my niche in, and that's what I'm going to coach on a lot more today is the seller finance aspect or creative finance, different umbrellas. So with that being said, understanding your buy box. This has to go with location. This has to go with your asset class and a lot of different avenues that I am going to write out. I will write out my buy box that I'm super clear on, and hopefully it helps you understand what yours might be. Going back to that example of how many people I've turned down, there's so many people that come to me, Tanner, I need to find a cash flowing rental property in Utah. Will you help me find something? My immediate answer to that is, okay, what do you want to buy? Anything that cash flows in Utah. Okay, cool. I find something that cash flows in Utah. It's a condo in Layton. Oh, I don't like Layton. Also, I don't like condos. Why didn't you tell me that before? They're wasting my time, right? So being crystal clear about this, and again, it's not personal. I just have a limited amount of time. And if you don't know what you want, it's very rare that you're going to actually close on a property. So let's go through mine. I am after small multifamily, which is 1 to 4 units. I'm super, super serious about only buying in this. I don't like condos. I don't like townhomes. I like small multifamily in Salt Lake in Utah County. For me specifically, I only want multifamily properties that are owned free and clear. And that goes down into the strategy aspect of your buy box. I only want true seller finance, which means I'm negotiating directly with the seller for my terms instead of the bank, right? So that's what the seller finance aspect is. That's how I can get low interest rates. There are other clients of mine that like subject to lease options. They like going with a bank. The lending aspect is another large umbrella that you can get lost in. So small multifamily, Salt Lake, Utah County, true seller finance. For me, part of my buy box is because I'm an active deal finder, I'm a lot more strict than most people. So I would not use my buy box as yours unless you are going to put in the work to find these deals yourself. So for me, it's an 8% minimum cash on cash return. And we will dive into that later in this video of what cash on cash means and how we can actually analyze that. So this is my buy box, but it could look a lot different for you. And I will show you a realistic buy box for a lot of my clients who might not have 150 grand sitting around to buy a property, right? A lot of my clients, they don't have 150 grand to put down on a small multifamily. So they might have, let's say 70 grand. And so they are open to condo or single family. They might hate HOA. So they're only single family. That's super common too. They might not want to deal with super old electrical. So they might say the property is only 19. I'll only touch a property if it's built in 1960 or newer. That's super common. And they might say I'm open to subject to based on their goals. Subject to allows for you to get in properties with less money down, true seller finance, because the seller owns it 100% outright. They might require a larger down payment. So subject to or true seller finance, that could be part of their buy box. And then the financing side, we covered that. Then location, right? A lot of people, let's say they want to self-manage it. They might be only open to Utah County. That's a realistic buy box that I can take serious. And when I find a property that's a single family home, 1960s, I guess the other part is how much they're willing to deploy, right? So they might say, I have 80 grand max. That doesn't mean I'm going to only find them an 80K down payment, but at least I know. Now, if I find a property that might have 70K down payment, it's in Provo, which is Utah County. It's a true seller finance. It's a 1975 build, a single family. Guess what I'm thinking of? The person that sent me a crystal clear buy box because they know what they want. If someone sends this to me and I said, what's your timeline for wanting to buy? If I brought you this exact deal. And if they don't close on it, they better have a good reason. If they said ASAP, because that's how my business works. I have to know where I'm putting my time, right? So that's the buy box side. You have enough money? Cool. What do you want to buy? That's step 2, the buy box. Step number 3, how you're going to find these deals, right? I'm going to break this down into a few different aspects because finding deals, I could talk on this for 3 hours in and of itself. And it has a lot to do with how much time you have and how much capital you have. So with that being said, let's draw a little graph here. This axis is going to be time and this axis is going to be capital. Some people have a lot more time and some people have a lot more capital. At the beginning of my real estate investing career, I had a whole lot of this and not a lot of this. So what that meant is my strategy to find deals differed a whole lot to where I am now, which I have a lot more of this and a whole lot less of that. So I'm going to dive through many different marketing channels that you can use to find deals that cash flow in Utah. And I have used every single one of these, right? So more capital, less time. We're going to call this PPC. This is a price per click model. Think Google ads. I want to sell my house fast. post and someone clicks on that, they're a lot more interested. You're getting the hottest leads, but you are spending a lot more money for them, right? Now, let's go to the opposite spectrum. You have no money, but you have a lot of time. That might be you're cold calling yourself. Now, there are a lot of different strategies or marketing channels that you can mix in this axis, right? For me, what I do a lot of, and even though I have capital to invest in marketing, I have found this strategy, and I'm giving you the secrets here, so you better write this down, to be one of the most cost-effective and time-effective strategies. And it's probably because I've been doing this for 8 years, but calling on market deals has been a moneymaker for myself and for the agents that I train. And so I will put that one over here as well, just MLS deals. MLS deals. Now, I'm going to ignore this axis for now and just write out different ones. Mail, like direct mail marketing is great. That's probably more expensive, better leads. You have managed cold callers where you are paying people to cold call for you, but you are not the one calling, right? I call those managed cold callers. Managed cold callers, MCC we'll call it. AI, artificial intelligence, has been coming in strong in this world of real estate, especially in the investment scene. So AI outreach, also probably more a capital intensive form of marketing. I played around with this one. You can pay people that are like robots to cold call for you. You might have gotten a cold call already that sounds like it's a mix of a robot and a real person, and it's probably AI. We have tried automated text messaging where they can cold text someone and it's a robot, like think ChatGPT, that will qualify a lead for you. Now, I've played with a lot of these. The thing is, in 2026, there's a lot of regulation happening in a lot of different avenues of marketing, right? So that's one thing that I caution you to look through and to be above board. There's nothing worse than getting threatened with lawsuits. It happens all the time if you're not going about it the right way. If you're calling people that are on a do not call list, which there are ways to scrub a list, it's not as overwhelming as you think, so don't let that be an excuse, but tons and tons of different avenues. So let's dive through it again. You have enough money to buy a property. You're crystal clear on what your buy box is. Now, how do you find a deal? If you have a lot of time, you might be hitting the phones, you might be calling on market, you might be door knocking. That's another popular strategy. Now, let's say you don't even want to deal with the acquisition side. You don't even want to stress about how to find a deal because, quite frankly, this process that I just dove through, that took me 5 years to even get a good traction going on it. 5 years of grind, capital, lots of hours. And I don't expect everyone to do that, especially everyone that wants to buy a cash flowing rental property. You don't have to go direct to seller. That's what this is, direct to seller. Now, if you don't go direct to seller, the next avenue is networking. You need to find people that are doing this. You might pay a little bit more because you're paying a wholesaler commission, but if it saves you a lot of time and they're getting better deals than you can get, it's far worth it. How do you go about finding those people? Facebook pages are gold. You can find people that are actually doing deals because they post their deals in there. They're commenting. I would work on networking with those people. Give them a ring. Tell them that you're looking to buy in 2026. You have this much capital. You'd love to find a cash flowing rental property. I get those DMs all the time, and I've done a lot of deals from those people. The other aspect of that is attend real estate events. You need to start meeting the players, the deal finders per se. They're out there. I know of 20 plus in Utah that find cash flowing deals every single month, and that's because I'm in this industry, but there's no excuse for you not to find those people as well. So we talked about direct to seller. We talked about, okay, I don't want to deal with direct seller. Now I'll find Tanner Litchfield to find me a deal. That's more than okay. The next thing I want to talk about is how you can set yourself up to be a good buyer. Now, this is a funny concept in the real estate game. If I'm a realtor, you're going to treat me like garbage because there's a ton of realtors out there. They have a crappy name and there's a low barrier of entry, right? So if I'm a realtor trying to get your business, you're going to be like, all right, whatever, like follow up with me in 6 months. I don't care. If you find a good deal finder, it should be the opposite. You should be investing in that relationship versus the other way around. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. I've turned down so many people because they're not a good buyer in my eyes and they waste my time. So I'm going to write this out, different avenues that you can do to be a good buyer. Okay, now that we got a nice clean white whiteboard for you. We're going to dive through how you can be a good buyer and how you can not get turned down by people like me. Buyer. First step, know what you want. Know what you want, right? This is extremely important. And this goes back to the buy box part. If you're not crystal clear, you're not going to close. That's just the truth of it. I've been doing this game for a long time now. And if you don't know what you want, you're not going to close on a property. The other part is clear communication. If you're not communicating, I'm not taking you serious. For example, if I present you a deal, I don't expect you to buy that deal 10 out of 10 times. In fact, like quite complete the opposite. I understand that you're moving money and it has to make sense for you. I'm a buyer myself, so I know how it goes. But if I send you a deal or two and you don't tell me anything, like no feedback, I'm probably not sending you another deal. Like, to be honest, I lost a lot of patience with these type of people as well. Like if I just send them a deal and they don't respond even, then they say, hey, Tanner, I need to buy a deal in the next 3 months. And I'm like, well, where's the feedback on the last 3 deals that I've sent you? I have no idea what you're after, right? So clear communication is crucial. Just to give like some credibility towards what I'm talking about, there is one buyer that has bought 80% of my good deals because he knows what he wants. He's an extremely clear communicator and he is a man of his word. What that means in this industry, if you say you're going to close, you're going to close. I don't expect all you newbie investors to have the confidence to go to the closing table every time you say you're going to, but the honest truth is you're not going to get as good of deals as these more experienced investors because there's a lot more risk involved with me. If I bring you a deal and there's like a 70% chance it's closing, whereas this guy, it's a 100% chance, I'm usually going to go to this guy. It makes my life easier. The other way to be an amazing buyer is to be liquid more often than not. Coming from my perspective as someone with the deal, I have so much going on in my life and I have so much going on with my business. When I get a good deal, which takes a lot of effort, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, right? When I finally have that good deal, I want my life to be easier. If in my head, I think, okay, I have $20,000 check attached to this. If it gets to the closing table, who do I know that's going to make this as easy as possible for me? I'm going to go to my top VIP buyers is what I call them first. They are going to get first dibs on this before the mass public does. And if one of them doesn't want it, then I go to maybe my Instagram or an email list, etc. So knowing what you want, super important. Clear communicator, which I will add, give feedback. These aren't my homes, so I'm not going to take offense to it, but you need to tell me what you want or else I'm not going to be able to help you, right? Be a man over your word. If you say you're going to close, get it to the closing table, make sure you're a performer. And if not, you're going to burn a lot of bridges with deal finders in the industry. And then lastly, how often you're liquid, right? If I can go to my VIP buyers, like let's say I have 5 buyers that are super serious, I know that 80% of the time they are going to have 100 grand plus that they're going to be able to take a deal down. So it makes my life easier versus trying to vet through 200 buyers and who has money, who's serious, who's not. It just takes a lot of brain space. So that's what you can do to be a good buyer, right? So that's that. The next step is analyzing deals. I have videos on videos of running numbers for seller financing deals here in Utah specifically. So if you want an in-depth breakdown of how to analyze deals, you can go to my page. I have a free seller finance calculator that I will give you guys as well. But I'm going to give you guys just some napkin math here on this portion for today's sake in today's video. What a lot of people fail to do is analyze a lot of deals, right? So we talked about liquidity. We talked about knowing what you want, your buy box. We talked about how to find these deals, whether it's marketing, whether it's utilizing a deal finder like myself. We talked about how to be a good buyer. The next step of that equation is analyzing the deals, right? If you don't analyze enough deals, you are not going to have enough confidence to take a deal to the closing table. And what I mean by that is I always challenge people. Okay, you're ready to buy a deal. If I say, how many deals have you analyzed to buy in the last 3 months? And if they say, I haven't analyzed any, I tell them straight up, I say, dude, my confidence, even if I brought you the best deal of the year, my confidence for you closing on that is like 5% because you don't know what a good deal is from from a bad deal because you're not analyzing enough, right? So the biggest part of analyzing deals is knowing what a bad deal is and knowing what a decent deal is. If you analyze 50 deals and not a single one of them is an 8% cash on cash return or even a 5% cash on cash return, and then I bring you one that's 5, then you should understand it's a good deal and you bring it to the closing table. So let's dive into this. What I like to do, there's a ton of people that just want break even in Utah because it's growing so fast, and that's completely okay. But I'm going to say a 5% cash on cash return is a good deal in Utah. Now, how do we find that? A cash on cash return metric, this is calculated on how much money you're putting into a deal and how much you're getting out just on cash flow, right? So if you get a 5% cash on cash return, that's only your cash flow that you're getting back from the deal. That does not include your tax savings, the appreciation, the principal pay down, a ton of different avenues of real estate that really make a 5% deal more like a 25% return on your money. So don't let this 5% cash on cash return confuse you with a return like you would see in the stock market, right? So this is just one avenue to look at cash flow. And what we do to find cash flow first is we take all of our income minus all of our expenses. Now, what happens is people are very bullish on their income. They will use their utilities, their pet fees, all the above to say that their income is higher than it is, their rental income, right? So that's the easy part, making sure you include all of your expenses. We are used to bolstering that up in this industry. Now, what people fail to do a lot is to add up all their expenses. They want to seem like their cash flow is actually better than it is. So this is what I want to harp on a lot is the expenses. And when it comes to expenses, we need to make sure that we are including, of course, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, which maintenance is if your tenant breaks a toilet, if you need to paint a wall, if they poked a hole in the drywall, right? Like that's all maintenance. Aside from the maintenance, which a lot of people miss this one, is capital expenditures. We call this CapEx for short. CapEx is the things that we know will break at some point, but they might take 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. And we don't want to be surprised by those expensive fixes. So we need to be setting money aside today to save for these capital expenditures, namely the roof, the furnace, the water heater, right? HVAC in general, plumbing. We need to set aside some reserves to save for CapEx so that we're not hit with those surprises. So we have CapEx, maintenance, insurance, taxes, and then also if you are not managing it yourself, we have property management. So with this being said, property tax and insurance, those are easy to calculate. You can get quotes for insurance or you can estimate it. Property tax is public record, so you can pull that directly. If you don't know how, ask your deal finder. It's super easy. Now, maintenance, CapEx, property management. I am going to give on an average, usually a sliding scale depending on the quality of the place, how old it is, how newly it's renovated, how old the systems are. It's usually a sliding scale for each of these for about 6 to 8% of monthly income, right? So if you are getting $2,000 a month in rent, use 6 to 8% of 2,000 for your estimates on maintenance and CapEx. If it's a really old home, then you're probably going to be 8, sometimes even 9% on CapEx and maintenance. So combine those, we'll call it around 15% that you need to save for expenses on maintenance and CapEx. And then property management, you can throw in 8% of your rents. So those are the expenses side. And I want to harp on that because it's the most important part. Once you have your cash flow, we are going to take your annual cash flow divided by everything you've put in there. So your capital, which can be, I'm going to summarize it as your down payment plus rehab. And this is going to give you a cash on cash metric. And if that's above 5% in a good area in Utah, it's not a bad deal. If I find a deal that's a 5% cash on cash return in a good area and it's not a crappy house, it's selling pretty quick. So that's a good metric to have. Now, once you've analyzed tons and tons of deals, now it's time for the closing table. I know this sounds easier said than done, but the closing aspect, especially when you're dealing with a creative finance deal, is important because I don't want this deal falling apart on you. I want it to be clean clean and done right from the beginning. And so that means you need to be building a team. So let's go here. When it comes to closing, you need to focus on your title company, because we're talking about Utah here. We are a title state. Having a good title company is absolutely crucial. Let's say you need a rehab, you need to make sure you have contractors. These are all important things to do to make sure that the closing is smooth. And then having a good property manager, right? I'll just put PM. When I think closing, I think, do you have all your vendors in your team aligned to make sure it's a smooth transaction? And a title company, having them on your side is massive. I lost 180 grand on a weird creative finance deal that I would never ever do to this day. And if I had a good title company on my side, it wouldn't have happened. So super crucial there. Now, I will tell you, when it comes to the closing table, there's always going to be some anxiety around it. I have closed 14 rentals now to this day. Actually even more than that, because I've sold some, right, and acquired more. So we'll call it 18 to 20 rental properties that I've closed on. And every single time there is anxiety centered around it, because it's scary when you wire 50 grand, or like some of mine, it's 100+ grand into a deal. It's scary, right? You don't know if it's going to work out. And that's part of the risk that we're playing in this industry. So I challenge you, if you've done your due diligence and it's checking out, it's still going to be scary, but get to the closing table. Once it's stabilized and performing, that's going to give you a lot of confidence to do the next deal. And that's what we're after doing our deals, right? At the beginning is that confidence to show that it's possible to find cash flow in Utah. I have a deal right now. It's a triplex where it's currently being rented out at close to $5,000 a month. I think it's like $4,700 a month in rent. And my mortgage is $2,250. All right. So if you don't think there's cash flow in Utah, that's an example right in front of you. I have videos where I've broken down that acquisition as well. So make sure you are subscribing to my content. I'm trying to give as much free game out as possible, because I am extremely bullish on Utah as a market. I'm extremely bullish on this strategy that I've laid out for you guys. And I know if you follow it, then you can find cash flow in Utah. And one of the best times to do it, which is in 2026, because people are on the sidelines, guys. And you guys, if you jump in and take advantage of this opportunity, like I've been doing for the last few years, it can change your life like it has mine. So let's summarize. To begin, we need to make sure you have enough liquidity to buy a property. Number two, we need to make sure that you guys know what you want to buy. And step number three, we need to make sure you know how to find a deal. If you're not the one going to the sellers off market and negotiating these deals, make sure you're networking with people like me to find those deals. I'm going to pause right there and tell you guys that I am not like trying to be biased on coming to Tanner to find a deal, because quite frankly, I have enough buyers. I don't have enough deals, right? So I don't care if you come to me or not. I'd love to help you find a deal, but the reality is my bottleneck is always the deal. So if you can find them, it's always better. That's a short way of saying that. Once you learn how to find a deal, the next step is analyzing these deals. Analyze so that you know what a good deal is from a bad deal. And the next step is the closing table, and you're there. If you guys have any questions, throw them in the comments. I love to be interactive and help you guys as much as I possibly can. Thank you for tuning in to this video that's a little bit longer than my other ones, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one.